I'm very, very pleased to have Lisa Baker from Bakering, our corporate partner, as my co-presenter today. So thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
From there in Wales. So just to say to you that at the bottom of the screen, there's a Q&A and a chat button. So if you have any questions as we go along, please register them in there, and then what we'll do, we'll get to those questions at the end of the presentations. We are recording this, and so we will make the download available at some time in the next few days. So I hope you'll enjoy this, and we've entitled this "Life After Lockdown: Driving the Future." Well, I'm sure last year, when none of us would have imagined that COVID-19 was going to have such an impact on us personally and as a business. So life after lockdown, we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I've even told today that my hairdresser is going to be opening up in the next week or so, so looking forward to that. So we now very much, Forums International very much wants to look at focusing on driving the future. So so our forum program over the coming months will focus on all aspects of what we as professionals can do to drive the future. The impact has been difficult to measure, but I'm a great believer that we are very resilient as professionals. But we now need to look to the future, and we've got a big job to do. So, so as I say, we're looking very much to use the forums to help you drive the future within your own businesses and in the industry across the board. So for those of you who know the forums, nice to see you. Those of you who don't, I'm just going to do a little canter through some of the history. And it all started back in 1991, where we started running our first forums. Forums International was started in 2015. A couple of other milestones. We started the Pharmaceutical Forum in 2018. We went global in 2019, where we held a forum in Montreal. We also started the Fraud Prevention Network in 2019. And 2020, we are now, of course, running everything virtually. But it's been very, very successful so far. I'm really pleased that we are connecting with credit professionals across the globe. We've had everybody from America to Mexico. We had somebody from Chile the other day. So you know, it's really, really good to interact with people and find out what they're doing in their own geographies. So just to underline really what the forums are all about, I'm starting off with a couple of dictionary definitions here. Networking, so the action or process of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts. And communication, the process of passing information and understanding from one person to another. In simple terms, it is a process of transmitting and sharing ideas, opinions, facts, values, etc. from one person to another or one organization to another. Put those two things together, I believe that really sums up what our forums are all about. So if you've not seen us, come along. Now, some of you will recognize some of the faces on these pictures, and we're really looking forward to when we'll actually get back to holding those physical meetings again. Some of our members are really saying they can't wait, but I think it's unlikely to be in 2020. I think we're going to probably be virtual for the rest of this year. And then we'll be giving people the option to actually come along virtually or physically, depending on the meeting and the agenda, of course. So, but it will be great to see people. Now, communication circle. This slide describes our info hub, which is really the center of our communication circle. The sharing of information and experiences between our members is very key in supporting them face the current and future challenges. Interaction within a forum, the cross-fertilization between forums, and the additional input from our corporate partners, subject matter experts, and for other info sources makes the circle very, very powerful. And we're growing this, and so this is a good description. So, those you don't know, the 8 forums that we're running today, I'm not going to go through them all, but we're running 8. We're also running monthly webinars. Tuesday morning at 10:30, we're running our drop-in coffee break, which lasts about an hour. And we're getting people coming again from all over the world. We've had the UK, Dublin, Lebanon, Cyprus, Australia, and it's really, really good to meet those professionals and to talk to them. So they're sharing experiences, asking questions, but with no boundaries. So yeah, Zoom does work. We're really proud to have our corporate partners. We're proud also to be a CICM corporate partner. So we've got some great names there. And so I'd like to thank all of our corporate partners for their support in helping us continue to maintain our existing forums and also, of course, to develop them ongoing. Now, there's got a lot of information here. I'm not going to go through it all, but really, why are we different? We've got members from around the world, from USA to Lithuania to the UK. All of our agendas are driven by the members. We do lots of interaction-based sessions, so it's not death by PowerPoint. It's not lecture-based. Those workshops and discussions are led by subject matter experts, and put that together with members' experiences, it actually becomes very, very powerful. And there's always an output from the forums as well. So we don't just walk away and leave the flip charts behind. The forum's also there to build relationships with other professionals and also to improve your team's productivity and results. We like to hear what our members say about us, and there's too many to go through here, but the 2 I like the most are probably "Great day, Laurie, really thought-provoking." And that was probably the best one I've been at. All subjects were very relevant, and we strive to deliver that at everyone. So thank you for all those positive feedback. We've done hundreds of agenda items, and so this is just a small smattering of what we've been covering recently, including the last one on the page, working during the lockdown. So, and as I said earlier, all of the agenda items are given to us by the members. And those of you who've been to my forums, you'll understand the significance of the singing bowl. It's a great way of getting people's attention. So, just to let you know, our forums are subscription based. They're all running quarterly now. As I say, there'll be options to have them be physical or virtual going forward. We are offering different payment options. We're offering discounts for those who belong to more than one forum, and we do have quite a few that belong to more than one. And of course, you get access to everything from the info hub right through to, if you're a CICM member, you can claim CPD points. So the list is quite endless. So in summary, everybody's time poor. I know that working from home, I believe I've been told that people are actually working longer hours than working from home. I don't know whether you'd agree with that or not. So taking time out can be seen as a luxury, but it is so easy. We're now doing it virtually. So you can work it from your own desk or from where your location is at the moment. Our forums are not just meetings, but they're communities. So it's not just that 4 meetings a year. It's more than that. With InfoHub, we now have that 24/7 capability. They're there for you to learn new skills, address business challenges, and finally, I think the final item should come up in a second. The subscription-based, but attending your first forum is free. So please come and join it. They're running from 10 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock in lunchtime each forum. So you know, 3 hours. It'd be good to see you. So anyway, I'd like to now hand over to Lisa. And
thank you, Laurie.
Thank you, Lisa. And
thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. I know there's some familiar faces on here that I know and some that I don't. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Lisa Baker-Reynolds. I'm one of the directors of Bakering International, and we're a global debt collection and receivables management company. So I presented with Laurie last month around how credit management could respond to COVID-19 and how you could basically approach your clients. And we just thought this would be a great follow-on subject in how you actually go around your collection strategies and any changes you need to make. Please do feel free to ask questions. I think webinars are great, but I do miss the interaction with the audience. So before we look at why you should make changes to your collection strategy, I thought it'd be quite opportune to just have a quick look at where we stand with global risk, any changes that have occurred, and what challenges you face as credit management, which would require a change in your collection strategy. It's not all positive news, I'm afraid, which you probably expect. The International Monetary Fund released quite a large paper early March, the IMF, and they predicted that the global economy is going to contract by 3% in 2020. But the World Trade Organization actually just counted that, and they believe it's going to contract by 11% in 2020. So there are definitely some tough times ahead within credit management. The IMF have projected that countries that have been most severely hit by the pandemic have already lost 8% of working days in 2020. So we're looking at countries like Italy, Spain, the UK, the US, but even countries that haven't been that hit, thankfully. So if you're looking at Scandinavian countries, New Zealand, Canada, for instance, they've still lost 5% of their working days, which is going to have an effect, of course. The baseline scenario at the moment is the pandemic is going to fade in 2020, fingers crossed, and all the assumptions that have been made have been based on that. I do recommend you have a look at the IMF report on the website. It is very informative. It's 200 pages long, so I wouldn't say it's an easy read, but it definitely explains the domino effect of what's going on within the economy and how that can affect your credit management and the challenge you're going to have. I think the general assumption is that all countries will experience disruptions to economic activity. Some have been more worstly hit now, but some are now just feeling the effects of that. So we've got some quite shocking early indicators. Well, negative loss already. We've got some quite big companies there who have already stated job losses, and they're not furloughed, they're actual job losses. And I think we're seeing it come from a multitude of different sectors, not just the immediate sectors that we would expect, like airlines. We're also seeing a knock-on effect now within the car industry, and particularly within manufacturing and the apparel industry, which has seen quite a large hit. Quite worryingly, the US has now reported that they've surpassed the 40 million mark for unemployment, which is now at the level of the Great Depression. So that's not good news. The EU has also reported job losses of over 7% collectively, which is big number. So initial feedback from the credit industry, so what we're hearing at the moment, is actually quite positive. But we do think that this is very much the calm before the storm. We're part of many different credit forums and credit circles, where credit managers share their experiences, they share payment experiences. And when they were asked how they found the results for March, April and May, they've been very positive. I think initially when COVID hit, credit management quite rightly worried, and I think they just expected payments to just stop and to see a high default rate, but it didn't, and companies have been making payments. But we don't actually believe the effects of COVID have struck yet. I think at the earliest we're going to see probably around August time, but it's definitely going to be Q4 where we're going to see the most casualties and defaults start to increase. So it's interestingly, a lot of companies at the moment haven't seen many insolvencies yet. But we do think that the insolvencies they have seen hasn't actually been an effect of COVID. They're more opportune business closures where the companies were thrown in due to poor performance anyway. So we do believe that COVID-19 will negatively impact the EU economy for at least the next 10 years, the global economy much longer. And of course, credit managers need to prepare their timeline of risk, not just for immediate risk, but also incremental, particularly over the next 12 to 24 months, where you're going to see the biggest changes and impact. So when we're talking about the positivity that the credit management are reporting, something that a lot of our clients said to us was as soon as COVID hit, they offered blanket payment extensions to a lot of their clients, particularly in countries which were most severely hit. So Italy and Spain, two common ones. Now, we don't actually advise you do that. I personally think you should try and avoid any blanket decisions per se. The reason for that is if we look at what we're facing in the future, at the moment there's quite a feeling of buoyancy with some companies, because if they haven't felt the negative effect of COVID, they still had money in the bank from previous months where they were trading fine. So they had the money to pay. They've also had a lot of companies approaching them now with loans and grants, which have been made available. So they're feeling quite confident that they can get low interest loans, which a lot of are taking advantage of course, whether they need it or not right now. But we do know that this is going to dry up. So fiscal support is only going to last for so long before governments say, look, enough is enough, we can't afford to keep injecting cash into the economy. There has been a large stimulus of payments by countries. I think the UK has been probably one of the most generous. We've seen a 400 billion stimulus from the UK government, and the EU announced a 750 billion injection, which is going to help, of course. One thing I would say that we have seen from a debt collection perspective, a lot of companies have applied for loans and grants, and they've been approved. And we're talking about countries like Italy and Spain. The problem is many haven't come through yet. So yes, they've been approved, but we are seeing a delay with some countries. So we're talking about extending blanket payments. If you'd offered a blanket payment extension in March, for example, a good 75% of those companies could have afforded to have paid you then. And I think it's always good to take advantage of payment when you can get it, because you don't know what's around the corner. As fiscal support dries up, of course, you're going to get a lot of uncertainty then with the banks. They won't be as confident as they are now to extend. The knock-on effect, of course, to that to credit management is that they're going to come to you and they're going to seek payment extensions because they can't get the funding coming in. And this is when they're going to start to see the actual effects of COVID. Of course, when companies can't get access to funding and liquidity, the knock-on effect is we're going to start to get a lot more redundancies and unemployment. The impact to credit on that level will be you're going to start feeling an increase in pressure from your sales team. The reason being the markets are going to become far more competitive. So your industry peers are going to be reacting. The sales team are going to take advantage of as many sales as they can. So you're going to feel that pressure. And of course, you're also going to see a lot of defaults when we see a lack of public spending, particularly in areas like retail, automation in the car industry. If people aren't spending money, we're all affected. And your terms are also going to get challenged quite heavily. And then ultimately, this is what we're all going to expect at some stage, a large increase in companies defaulting and insolvency rates. So yes, you're going to see your ultimate bad debt at that stage. And also we're going to start seeing a lot of Phoenix companies. Interestingly, one of our clients, we're talking about, there's been a huge increase in new business registering a company's house, which I thought was quite a strange time to set up a business. But we're wondering, is this now the new age of Phoenix companies, where a business knows that they can't survive the pandemic? So they're preparing for that and they're setting up new trading companies already. So what challenges do you have as credit management at the moment from COVID-19? I think quite an evident one, which a lot of people are talking about, is the issue around transparency and your access to financial information. Most of us use credit reference bureaus. A lot of us won't use one, we'll use a few, which is always a good idea. But the problem is, a lot of the algorithms that the bureaus use are based on the last year's financials. And now I know that bureaus have reacted. They have launched new scores, new COVID scores. But my fear is, are they still too generic for what you need? Our advice on this is, please don't use one credit reference bureau. Do use as many as you can. The reason for that is the file financials will always be the same, but where different bureaus can support you is some have more information than others, and they have access to their own shared payment pools of information, and that's going to become more prominent now, ongoing. So the current credit application form that you have, we think is going to change drastically. The reason being, you need a lot of information to have certainty when you're making credit decisions. Do you get kickback if you ask for more information? You might do, yes. But I think eventually it's going to become a given, and companies are going to expect to be asked for more in-depth information. So things like management accounts. I think to ask your clients, what is your strategy to COVID-19? How are you going to recover? What is the impact on your business? But with that, we have to take into consideration GDPR. If you're taking on board more information from clients, and you might actually want to include an NDA in that. We also think, vice versa, you're going to be asked for a lot more information from your clients' procurement teams. So instead of it becoming a credit application form, it's much more of a client engagement form where you engage business together and share more information. So if we're predicting the level of impact on your client base, a good question to ask is, how well do you know your clients? How well do you know your clients' resilience and business continuity plans? Have you asked them yet? I tend to send out a lot of information, European and global information, to our client base. And some companies will say to me, Lisa, I only trade with the UK, we're very UK centric. So whilst it's interesting to know what's going on globally, it doesn't directly affect me in credit management. So I would kind of question that now, because we know that COVID-19 is going to affect nearly every business in every country. And we're going to, within our credit management process and credit policy, we're going to have to think far more around a company's supply chain and their ability to trade ongoing, how COVID will affect this supply chain. So we're definitely going to need an increase in communication with our client base. That's a given. Because a lot of companies, if you work on the 80-20 rule, then companies naturally know that the 80% of the client base, or the large volume of clients within their base, because they tend to focus more on the high value accounts, naturally, you know, the 20% of your book. So ongoing now, you're going to have to determine a strategy of gaining more information from the companies, the clients you don't know so well. And that might be a challenge, because I know a lot of credit teams have been furloughed. There's been a lot of redundancies, and resources definitely going to be a pressure point within credit management. So you've got challenges here. You need more information from the client base. You need to understand them better and what the impact of COVID is going to be on them. But at the same time, you have the rules to do that. You're going to have the challenge of adapting your credit policy to how your company is reacting to COVID. And you're also going to have to take a lot of suggestions, and you should definitely be at the table when the business is deciding how to steer the ship and where they're moving, and any strategical decisions, because credit management is key to that. It might involve you moving out of entire markets. If you trade internationally, we definitely advise you keep your eye on the global economy. You can sign up to websites like Bloomberg and the Financial Times. They're very good for daily information, because it's important you judge where your next risk is coming from. So not just where does your risk lie now, but where will that the next move. So you might want to move out of entire geographies, and you might want to increase your profit margins and your profit levels in some other areas of trade to compensate for moving out of different markets. As I said, you know, credit management is undoubtedly going to be challenged by sales now more than ever as market competition increases. Over the past, over the past 5 years, possibly 10 years, but definitely over the last 5 years, a lot of multinationals have been in a race to keep up with technology. There's a lot of discussions around robotics, AI. You know, definitely technology and software is a good thing to have within your business, and it brings with it a lot of efficiencies. I think the problem we've got now, and maybe we're a victim of our own success if we've advanced too far with technology, is the software that you might be using to say push your learning process is very much based on behavior. And of course, that might not be geared out for blanket payment extensions or suppliers coming to you and ending their payment terms, or it's not geared up for disaster. So you might look at not relying so much on your software or your technology, or definitely get a more fine balance with bringing in human touch and having your team telephone and speak with clients. So you might want to look at changing your dunning processes. Speaking with a large BPO company back a couple of weeks ago, and they've definitely seen some problems, as you can imagine. If you've changed your business infrastructure to move from a decentralized model to a centralized model, and that could be moving to a shared service center or to BPO. There's a lot of conversations now around, do you actually take some of that back to have credit in country where you've got that local expertise, that market knowledge, and that culture? As the effects of COVID-19 are hitting the economy, all countries are starting to show signs of effect. But there are some countries which have been hit more heavily than others. And again, it is important to consider the supply chain mechanism, not just your own, but your client base, and how can they survive ongoing, and what is the impact to them? So how can credit management change their collection strategy? Obviously, we've looked at some of the challenges that you're facing. And with that, what can you do to protect yourselves? So we've looked at 3 key areas that you might want to look at within your collections. A good point could be look at your client base, not just according to turnover, but look at your clients as far as profitability is concerned. Because you might have a lot of clients that you invoice a great deal to, but they might not actually be very profitable. And interestingly, what you might find is a lot of the profitable clients you have will sit in the 80% of your client base and not your 20%. So you need to start taking risk and selling more to the smaller clients than maybe some of the larger ones. Also look and analyse your key account segments. No doubt you'll be selling a lot more stock, or there'll be a lot more service requirements to your larger businesses, to your larger clients. And if you were to lose one of those, what is the impact? Something which is becoming more and more prevalent, I think, is the strength of your contracts and your terms and conditions. So we've worked with many companies where they're international or they're European, they trade outside the UK, but the contracts are based on UK law. Now that's challenging, particularly for us from a debt collection and litigation perspective. When you take a debt to court and your terms and conditions are based on UK law as opposed to local law, that can have a negative impact. Something we've been discussing a new issue which has come before is a French translation here. It's force majeure. Can companies claim non-payment than that within their contract? Interestingly, I put a poll within the credit and collections group on LinkedIn last week, and it was interesting to see some of the answers. I thought 30% of credit management believe no, a company can't say we're not going to pay you and claim force majeure, but a large percentage of companies said that they can. The true answer is it actually depends on your contract, within your contract. So it's definitely worthwhile reviewing those and tightening them up where you need to. So if we look at tangible changes that you can make to your collection strategy, so once you've looked at why you need to make changes and issues that affect you, what you can do. Because resource is going to be a pressure point for most companies, ideally you want your clients to volunteer information to you. Now they're not always going to do that, so you need to find ways to proactively request client information and client intelligence. You also need to apply a more intense contact workflow to your entire client base. And again, ensure that's a fine balance between, yes, using technology and software, but also ensure you invoice and you have human contact. People always volunteer more information on a phone call than what they will in an email. And you also need to proactively inform your client base of your changes to your credit policy. So if we look at these 3 key aspects, something we recommended clients to do is actually comprise a short questionnaire of the information you ideally want from your clients. Not all will respond, but then you can bring in voice and phone calls to contact the people that don't respond to you. If a company has nothing to hide, then pretty much they will engage with you. And I think it is important to get as much information as you can from your clients at the moment. Always be mindful that they might not be totally truthful with you, of course. I think ask for backup documentation. Sorry. So again, if we think aside from automated technology, and how much physical resource do you have for telephone calls, consider changing your contact strategy. We always recommend you contact clients where possible before the invoice due date anyway, because that just shortens your payment terms. But there are some countries where you're not actually allowed to debt collect or make a collection call before the due date, so you have to be mindful of that. Germany would be one, but it's okay to make a customer service phone call. So definitely apply a more intense contact strategy. So something we think is very important is you advise your client base of how you are reacting to COVID-19. Now, a lot of companies will say, oh, I haven't paid you because I didn't know, or they'll feign no knowledge of. So the more you can inform your clients, then the better the results you're going to get. So I'm certainly not recommending you send out a copy of your entire credit policy. I'm not recommending that. I think a company should have two versions of a credit policy: your internal, your formal documented credit policy, and a client-facing policy. So you're informing them of the decisions you make if they don't pay to terms. You can also include in that policy words of encouragement. So how are they going to benefit by paying more on time? So if you do send out a new version and you explain to your clients how you're reacting, it's important you advise them at what stage they're going to start feeling negative impact. So at what stage you're going to move on time payments out, for example. Educate the debtors in country about the level of fiscal support that's available to them now. And that's something we urge. Because, you know, as a credit manager, you're not the first source of financial support. Companies shouldn't come to you and expect extended payment terms if they have the first source to the means of finance. Now, we have documents available that I'm more than happy to share with you, which details all the fiscal support in country, all the lending facilities that are available that you can use. So detail your debt collection process and name the third parties who you will appoint if they don't pay you. So they're actually aware of what is to come, what the negative impact will be if they don't pay to terms, and you're educating them about that. Something which is proven to be quite strong more and more now is if you inform debtors of your policy to share default payment information. Some of you might be sharing payment information with credit reference bureaus, or some might be members of industry-specific credit circles, and they're very powerful because it's the only way really you get a good idea of a company's aggregated debt position and how they're paying your peers in the industry. It's important to be helpful too. So inform your clients or give them a hierarchy structure of internal contacts, and they can contact you to advise you of any problems. We should always encourage communication. And finally, you know, how can credit management be bold in reaction to COVID-19? I think pretty much this is a time where credit management can be seen and heard within the business, and where they should definitely be appreciated. So something we advise clients they can do. Just having trouble clicking on here, bear with me. Is communication with key company stakeholders is critical. So how you engage with your board of directors, your CFO, other stakeholders, sales, customer service, you should definitely be part of any decisions that's being made within the business. Something we recommend you do is compile reports, proactively go away and compile all the information that you need on risk forecast, business replacement proposal, and changes to your credit management process. Why are you proposing that? What are the positive impacts to that? What are the negative? So you're actually preparing yourself for challenges. If we just look at these three reports in slightly more depth. So risk forecast. So you might already be looking at where your risk lies immediately, and some areas where you might need to pull out entirely. So there might be some countries where you think, we just can't warrant that level of risk. But if you're proposing to the board or to the business that you want to pull back credit lines or credit limits, you must balance that with something positive. So otherwise you're going to be seen as the sales prevention unit. But when you're advising of increased risk, it's important you have the facts and figures to hand. You can look at something like the recession. The nearest that we have to compare, I think, at the moment is the recession of 2008-2009. If you're purely UK centric, geography is still important to you, because definitely in the UK, COVID is going to affect some areas worse than others. There's definitely going to be certain industries and sectors more affected than others. You can break down your risk analysis by zip code. So you can propose to the board that you push different product lines more than others. But also look to identify and break down how much turnover and gross profit was made in the areas that you're proposing more out of last year, and what was your credit policy then. So mitigating risk, proposing to reduce trade and services in areas where has risk increased. Again, if you're going to suggest something negative about putting out certain markets or reducing credit lines, you really should balance that with something positive. So I can't find my slide here, Laurie, just to, there we go, stay with me. Yeah, so mitigating risk could be achieved by introducing a more varied way of trading and funding. So as a business, if you sell direct to market or direct to retail, there might be some countries where you consider working more on a wholesale basis. Likewise, if you work wholesale, there's some countries that be more safer if you like to work on an end sale basis. But definitely, the way you work doesn't have to be the same in all countries or in all territories. It's quite important to look at that and to spread your risk by different means of funding. Definitely explore the tools that are available to you. As a credit professional, you might want to start bringing in letters of credit more if you haven't used those in the past. Or look at invoice discount countries where the risk is particularly high. I know there's been a lot of discussions around credit insurance. I think there's recently been some good news about that and the support that the government is giving the insurance industry. But definitely, now is the time. If you haven't looked at credit insurance in the past, look at it now for some of your more risky areas. And there's also a lot of fintech funding coming out, which is quite new that you want to look at. So finally, I just wanted to finish with a question, really. How many board members of multinational companies do you know that have come from a credit management background? Because I think definitely, as I mentioned earlier, now is the time for credit managers to stand up, be seen, be heard, and become more senior within the business and more appreciated. But it would be good to see more credit managers get to that international board level. There might be a discussion to be had around how you think we can achieve that, and see more senior people at board level. So I don't know if there's any questions around that or any points people would like to make.
Thank you very much indeed, Lisa. Yes, you have some questions. You have. And
I'm not used to speaking for so long.
No, you have some questions. I'll tell you the first one from Jackson, and he said, I had the responsibility for credit in Spain, Italy, LAR and the Caribbean, and many companies there we cannot find info on through credit bureaus and DNB and so on.
Yeah.
I am separating my customers by industry, and for industries more effective, aviation, for instance, I am requesting more information and trying to understand the continuity plan those companies are preparing for themselves. Do you find segregating companies by industry is a helpful thing, and should this be done?
Yes, definitely. Definitely segment your client base by industry, because then you can investigate how COVID is going to impact those industries specifically. Because yes, all countries are going to be affected, but different industries will be affected more than others. And just to answer the question around the credit information, there are some countries which have far more relaxed filing laws than others. So like we're quite lucky here in the UK, you know, we have to file quite a lot of information. But when you look further afield, like LATAM, definitely the Caribbean, if companies don't have to file information, then they simply won't. There is a website, and I'm just trying to think of it. I will send some notes to all after this. There's a website you can go to which details the filing laws by country, so you can see what is actually available. And what I would recommend is you use a credit reference bureau who physically owns and digitizes that data in that country. Because the credit reference industry is quite incestuous. They all buy information from each other. The main benefit of going direct to the company who owns the data in that country is they will always have that much more information available. So I'm more than happy to help around questions around that. Hey there, Laurie.
I think you've just dipped out, Lisa. Just bear with me 1 second. So we've also got, do you see a big upsurge in debt collection litigation arising out of the crisis? And Lisa, if you do you think that this is avoidable if there is more transparency as you recommend?
So I think yes, definitely. So we're already starting to see an increase in debt placement, and in certain countries as well, and in some surprising countries actually, countries where the payment culture has always been very good, like Scandinavia. What we recommend, of course I'm biased because, you know, I appreciate I work for a debt collection company, but because there's going to be issues around resource for companies, I think businesses should focus on definitely their key accounts and high value amount, and the companies who are paying to term, so they can keep those KPIs where they are. Maybe consider pushing out definitely companies which are of higher risk, because any debt collection company or third party you choose, they can monitor and mitigate that risk for you. And yes, I mean, definitely shorten your escalation point, and push clients out for mediation earlier on. Because in truth, we don't really know which company is going to be most affected or how they're going to be affected. So I think you're going to have to take more quicker decisions, and push debt out at an earlier point for sure.
I lost you there for a minute, Lisa. I had a short power cut here, so I've just had to come back in again. Another question here: should we shorten or lengthen the chase path timetable?
Yes, I think I did touch on that in the presentation as well. Definitely apply more intense contact. Look to contact as many clients as you can prior to invoice due date, so you can understand if they have any disputes, because now more than ever, people are going to be looking for to extend payment terms. And as I said, yes, definitely look at your escalation policy and look to push debt out to third-party support earlier on than what you would. Only just to mitigate risk.
Yep. Okay. And the final question I've got here, oh, maybe we've got some more. can you ask John Swan's question? No, I haven't seen John Swan's question, but I shall find it. Lisa, do you agree that now we need help more than ever from sales folks and others who interact with customers to be our ears and eyes in looking out for customers in financial distress?
Yes, definitely. I think some of the best credit managers I've ever worked with and know, they have great relationships with their sales teams anyway. And there's different things they do to achieve that. But now more than ever, sales need to come together with credit. I know this is a discussion we have on a regular basis as well around when do salespeople get paid their commission? Do they get paid their commission when the client pays the invoice, or do they get paid on sale? I know there are still companies that pay commission at point of sale, but I think now more than ever that needs to change. Salespeople need to get paid when the money's in the bank, because they're more motivated and they have more reason to be involved in that collection process then.
Okay. Right, there is more questions. In fact, two very similar here actually. One is, should credit control offer payment plans to struggling customers, or instigate legal action and let the courts decide?
That's a good question. So I don't actually recommend you ever really go legal straight away anyway. When you make a credit situation a legal situation, you're pretty much closing that business relationship. You're closing the door on that business relationship. Like what we do as a business, we very much come in and mediate. And our aim as a business is to try and repair that relationship and turn the customer back into a paying client. That should always be the key objective. Avoid litigation where you can. One, because it's costly. Two, because in many countries it takes a long time to achieve judgments and enforcement. So you should always look for a more of a mediation route. Definitely don't hold on to debt in the hope that a company is going to pay. Because if it reaches a certain point and they haven't paid you and there's no genuine reason for it, it's highly unlikely they are going to just come to you and pay you without some form of escalation or some form of motivation to do so.
In fact, the other question is very similar. It says, as debt collection via the courts in the UK is severely restricted currently, how would you recommend companies escalate debt collection in the next few months? So I think that's a very similar question, isn't it?
Yeah, so we are preparing for this. So the UK's announced the 15th of June, you can't enforce a winding up petition unless if the debt has been occurred as a direct impact of COVID. And the debt has occurred after the 1st of March. We're pretty confident other countries are going to start following suit quickly as well, which is why we're encouraging companies, please don't hold on to your default debt. Try and find ways to escalate it. Do work with third parties, because it's going to come to a point where you won't be able to enforce it. And for the period of time that you're not physically allowed to enforce a debt, the risk profile of those debtors are going to continue to increase. So, definitely look to escalate much more quickly.
Okay. Well, Lisa, thank you very much indeed, and thank you much to everybody that joined us today. We had a really good number today, which is really good. And as we say, we have recorded it today, and it will be available for you to download in a few days' time. So thank you very much, and Lisa, please stay on, don't disappear. And just to say thanks so much to everybody, and please stay safe, and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you all.
Nice little mention here from somebody who said thank you very much. Thanks both.